I'll now proceed with this course. Now, of course, in AI, you'll notice that its popularity has grown, and there have been already several opinions and perceptions on what the science really is. No, so we understand, or we see as if because this is a new technology, we see it as supposedly also as a another tool for us to in general no, improve society as a whole. So we see here a lot of potential, we see a lot of possibilities, endless possibilities on how this new, well, I would say popular or relatively popular technology, no, how can benefit us as a whole. No? However, of course, there are still some misconceptions, there are still some fears on what AI and ML in general can really offer to us. No? I mean, there have been already talks as well of, say, AI being already self-aware, no? So meaning when we give it data and we feed it large amounts of data, no, how secure and how sure are we that this new technology will not overturn us like what the media has portrayed it to be? No, so I mean, you're familiar with this somewhat of a trope of an example already, no? If you've heard of the Terminator, there's already this talk of, are we already going into that future, no? So but no, us in, especially in the field of sciences and in engineering and computer sciences, no, it really matters on how we perceive a specific science on what it really is, no. And for us, no, we see AI and ML to be technologies that is more of like arguably an extension of mathematics in general. So you, if you were to really think about it and look into the nitty-gritty, no, and in fact, this is the one that we would be focusing on also today. Um, AI is actually a conglomeration in a way, or a combination of mathematical calculations, no? Especially in the field of machine learning, in the field of natural language processing, and in more recreational purposes, no, generative AI, no, or generative artificial intelligence. Of course, no, us, because of this new trend, no, how is it, or what is the real standpoint of AI in general? And nowadays, we would just see it as something that is right now already taking over the creative space, no, meaning that we use this tool not really much, well, for the common user, or for the everyday person, no, we normally use this for generating images based on text, right, and sometimes in a more grotesque image, no, like what we are seeing nowadays. Now, with that segue out of the way, no, let's now immediately proceed on what the topic is about for today. So, as I've mentioned, AI in itself is a science that is relatively expansive. No, it's a huge science in itself, and it is something that, in fact, doesn't go just in the scope of engineering or in computer sciences or even electronics. No? It even goes beyond that. No? So that is why we're going to now briefly discuss, no, what first we define what AI is as a science, no, and in some studies also as as an art form. We'll also briefly discuss the history of AI, because despite of it gaining traction and popularity in the early 2020s, no, I mean, we have already been seeing ChatGPT as early as 2020s. If you're going to look at it in a more retrospective approach, no, we already have existing tools and services that is technically already considered as AI. I mean, before ChatGPT became popularity nowadays, you may have noticed already other tools, or quote unquote assistants that is frankly already available on your smartphones, right? I mean, we have Siri, we have Alexa, among other of the voice assistants, no? So we will also discuss them there, and they can also be considered as a classification under AI. So apart from that, we'll also discuss the different branches and subsets of AI. And to be more specific, focus on one of them, which is machine learning. Okay, this is the branch of AI nowadays that because if we're going to look at, say, generative AI first, no, before you can even understand how you can create your own generative AI, you first also need to understand how does our models, no, or because definitely we would be creating models here, be able to process data and make sense of the data in general. So this is where machine learning would come in. Okay. We'll also discuss the different techniques and use cases of what machine learning is. And finally, like all technologies, now discuss the challenges and limitations of what AI and ML has yet to overcome. Okay. And this is also the reason why the dystopian future of having robots taking over the world is somewhat still a fantasy for us nowadays, no? Okay, so what is AI first, no? Because this is really we first need to describe what is it as a science, no? So this is a broad topic in computer science. So definitely it's spurred up within computer science. It is concerned with the creation of intelligent machines capable of mimicking human intelligence. Okay, although there is no specific definition, so there is really also no standard on how AI should be defined. No, there are also some um, theoretical definitions on what the technology is. No, so in one source here, it is the ability of a digital computer or computer-controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. So this definition inclines more on the perspective of AI with also the subset of robotics and mechatronics. Remember that for you to have an AI object or AI model, no, you don't necessarily need to have a tangible object for it. I mean, everything can be also implemented as purely software and it can still be considered as AI. The one that is currently portrayed in media nowadays, no, in movies and even in anime, no, is that when we think of AI, the first perception or the first impression that we have is that this concerns robots. But on the contrary, it's not just robots, no. This is also um, a science wherein it also deals with the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines. And take note here when we refer to as machines, it also doesn't really imply to be the mechanical machines here. It can also mean machines on the software perspective, meaning that you create objects and models that would be used to recreate or to simulate human behavior. Note here also that it did not specifically indicate whether human text, voice, appearance, okay, speech, or whatsoever. The only general term that you only need to consider here is that AI concerns with mimicking human intelligence or how the human brain or the human mind, no, behaves. Now, what are the different aspects of AI? No? So because it concerns really on the somewhat science or quote unquote the psychology of the human mind. No? It also deals with the different aspects pertaining to human mind. This is also the reason why AI, if you're going to look at it as a science, it doesn't just completely evolve around creating code and such. No? You also need to have a bit of analysis here as well. No? You don't necessarily just need to type out code. No? So what's one aspect here? Problem solving and decision making. So AI systems can analyze information, identify patterns, and make decisions based on their understanding of the world. Okay. So Of course, for it to have problem solving and decision making capabilities, it needs a way also to receive data. Okay, so this is where in the field of robotics, sensors would be coming in. In the field of machine learning and computation, this is where your data sets would come in. Okay, next one aspect is also the ability to learn and adapt. So AI systems can learn from data and experience, allowing them to improve their performance over time and adapt to new situations. When we say also, because us as humans, no, of course, we in some varying forms and degrees, no, we also learn from experience. We learn from trial and error. We learn also from if a mistake has already occurred beforehand, then definitely that's when that situation arises again, no, we already have experience on what to do next and what are the steps that we can prevent from happening again. So this is the same process that we are also attempting to mimic in AI. Okay, this learning can be achieved through various techniques, including machine learning, deep learning, and reinforcement learning. Now, this applies really more on the machine learning aspect, meaning on the software side. But take note that it is also applicable to robotics and mechatronics. Okay, so if you may have, if say example, you've been browsing YouTube, and for instance, you may have encountered a video by Honda. No, I mean, Honda, is it Honda? Yeah, I think it's Honda. No, they're one of the many car companies who have developed Asimo. I am not sure if you've heard also of Asimo. No, parts of the prototype or the prototypes that were developed when this one was being created, no, is also, or one of the stages rather, on how the prototype was being developed is that they also need to test the stability on how the robot is able to walk, right? And how do they do that? They punch the robot, they nudge it around, they push it over, you know, and they are intentionally teaching also the robot on how it can stabilize itself despite, say, bumping into something, no. So this is more of like collision detection at best. That's also a means for that robot to also learn. Okay, another aspect is the one that we are most commonly aware of, imitating human intelligence. So while not achieving true human intelligence level, AI systems can exhibit some human-like capabilities. There is a difference between an AI system. So there is what you would call actually a true AI, and I believe we have type 1 and type 2 AI systems. No? Type 1, these are the true AI where it is able to achieve um, sentience in a way that is somewhat almost identical to how a human would behave, right? And then there's also type 2 AI, which is more of like mimicry of human intelligence. This is the one that we are referring to here. So we haven't yet achieved that state of technology wherein it is able to achieve true human intelligence. The most that AI systems is able to develop nowadays is to imitate human behavior and human intelligence, no? And regardless, no, how is it able to achieve that, no? Through algorithms in the form of object recognition, in the form of speech. There is we're already where natural language processing would be coming in, no? um, Voice synthesis or synthesis, no? And also content generation. So content here can refer to be text-based, sound-based, or even image-based. And lastly, we have environment interaction. So as human beings, or even organisms in general, no, we also are, what also makes us different from AI systems is that we also behave specifically on what the stimulus or inputs or feedbacks we receive from the environment. So, say for instance, um, we are inside a room or we are, say, in a field that is relatively cold to us. No? So that is already considered as a stimulus or as temperature. No, and based on how we act, no, or based on our actions, no, we either embrace it or we change it. No, so this is also where the primal behavior of fight or flight response would also be coming in. No? So these are environmental interactions to us, and AI is also able to do this. No, so AI systems can perceive their surroundings through sensors and interact with the environment through actuators. So this allows them to gather information, manipulate objects, and navigate the physical world. Okay. Now, as I have mentioned also, despite AI gaining popularity in 2020s, no, just a few years ago, it has already been around as early as the 1940s. So you can imagine, no, that these systems have already been in the paper in research papers, no, as early as 1940s. That was even before the internet boom in the early 2000s. Okay, so arguably, we can also say that during the rise of electronics and in the discovery of electricity, no, this is also the same time wherein AI has also started to um, gain popularity in a way. No? So despite the boom of AI during the early 2020s, the science has been around since the early 1950s, and even some sources trace it back as early as the 1940s. So it's really been around for quite some time already. No? Now, AI as a science, you may have noticed that even though we have talked about topics that is related to programming and computer science in general, no, it is still a science and an art form to some that spans across several disciplines. And in fact, no, it can even span in philosophical disciplines. This is where also the philosophy of sentience would come in. So the study of sentience and how it can be applied into non-organic um, objects or non-organic entities, no, could also be applied. So there is also an overlap of AI with, say, philosophy, okay, or economics. In our case, because of the sudden traction of uh, AI and its availability across several use cases, no, this also begs the question on, remember that AI also relies on the data that you feed it. So whatever data that you give it to, that is how it would behave or it would respond, right? And having said that, no, how much data are we willing to give it? Okay. So how much? Because definitely the concept of security, the concept of politics and governance would also apply here. No, remember that because this is also a technology. No, it can, despite its promises to improve human society as a whole, there are also still some um, scenarios wherein this technology is still being used for malefic purposes, right? So if you may have heard of, say, the concept of deep fakes would be coming in, no? So we need a way to manage and mitigate such issues also from happening. So this is where another overlap of AI would be coming in, AI and governance, right? Or so how do we properly ensure that data is being controlled such that it won't go all over the place, okay? So practically speaking, however, when people think of AI today, almost always the one that they are referring to is a subset of AI, which is machine learning, okay, or training a machine to learn a desired behavior. Okay. Now, its branches, no, this technology, it shares several uh, overlaps, no, along with machine learning and even deep learning, no. So you can even consider this as sort of like an onion that has several layers, no. So, of course, the entire umbrella term here would still prefer to be artificial intelligence. So, remember that AI, this is a science that deals with creating human intelligent machines capable of performing tasks typically requiring human intelligence. How is it related to machine learning? It is actually a subset. Okay, so a subfield or a subscience of AI, which focused more on developing algorithms used from learned data in order to improve their performance without explicit programming. This is what machine learning is concerned is is it concerned about? Okay, so it deals really more on feeding it data and using that data in order to provide with a specific stimulus that it can produce in the form of, say, an output, in the form of text, or in a chart, or in a graph, no, or even in some cases, no, in sound, no. So, um, it differs from procedural programming, for instance, wherein you configure it with a discrete set of conditions. Machine learning really deals more on creating a model, feeding that model with data, and using statistics and mathematical calculations. No? Expect an output or response based from the data that you feed it with. Okay? Now, another subset of machine learning is deep learning. So we'll briefly tackle what this is about. No? So this is a subfield of ML inspired by the structure and function of the human brain. So specifically, the neurons that is somewhat the basic unit on how the brain is on how a brain works, no. So caveat here, and I'm sorry, I'm not a medical professional here, but I'll try my best also to give this as an analogy to what deep learning is, no. Now, deep learning is a subset wherein it utilizes or creates artificial neural networks, and these neural networks are then connected using layers in order to form a network, and from there, no, the machine or the model is able to have a specific response. Okay, normally deep learning nowadays is used for um, image processing, voice processing. So data that would normally involve continuous data, meaning that, example, in a time series, or if the data is found in a specific matrix, like in a picture or in a JPEG file, no. So this is where deep learning really shines, no. Okay, so um, we'll now briefly talk about machine learning and its different techniques. No? You can consider ML to be classified into two based on how a specific model is trained. Okay, so remember that in machine learning, we also deal with the creation, the training, and the optimization of models. And these models, you feed it with data. Now, how you train the model based on the data that you feed it with, no, is based on two possible approaches. You can either go for supervised machine learning or unsupervised. So in supervised, no, there are also several techniques or subsets found inside of it. No? So the two most common supervised learning algorithms here is regression and classification. So briefly, we'll also discuss this. Okay. Whereas for unsupervised learning, we have clustering and association rule learning. Now, um, this is not to say that this is the only two or the only two algorithms for supervised and unsupervised. In fact, there are also other algorithms available there. No, and in fact, no, you can even apply regression to unsupervised. No, so what I'm just showing to you are the most common algorithms, okay, or the most common approaches to machine learning. So let's start off with supervised learning. So what is it first? No? So supervised machine learning builds a model that makes predictions based on the evidence in the presence of uncertainty. So a supervised learning algorithm takes a known set of input data and known responses to the data and trains a model to generate reasonable predictions for the response to new data. So you can think of it like this is or in supervised machine learning, you give it with data that you already know what the answer is. No? So you give it an input and the expected output that you want it. No? And based on these data sets, no, you train that model so that when it receives unknown data and basing it from the data that you've trained it with, no, yield a new response. Okay, so in this example, no, or in this illustration, no, let's say for instance you have um, labels of say you have a data set that consists of four-legged animals or four-legged creatures, and part also of your input raw data also involves labels. So meaning that you have characteristics on how a cow would look like, how an elephant would look like, how a camel would look like, and how they would each differ. Okay? So in supervised machine learning, you feed it with this input data, okay? But before that, you need to train it first. No? You train it also based on a specific data set. So meaning you feed it based on, say, okay, if I have these characteristics of being a four-legged creature, which is able to produce milk, for example, and has horns, no? So I know that this is a cow. So when you receive data that has these same characteristics, tell it to be a cow or label it with it to be a cow. Okay. So if say I feed it with data that it is also a four-legged creature, but this time it has a hump on its back, no? And it is normally used, say, for transport in deserts, no? I know that this is a camel. Okay, so that when you receive information or data based on these characteristics, tell it or label it to be a camel. So that is how supervised learning works. You, as the developer of that model, feed it with known data, known input and output data, so that when the model runs real input data, it would know how to respond. Okay, so there. Now, as I've mentioned also a while ago, that the two most common algorithms for supervised machine learning is regression and classification. There is a difference between the two, in fact, and also what kind of information or insight do you want to get from your data? Okay, so let's start off with regression. Regression is a type of supervised learning that is used to predict continuous values. No? So meaning, if say your intention is, I know this data to be for this specific date, for instance, and I know also this data to be in this specific date, okay, what will be my data if I see it 4 days from now or 5 days from now? Okay, this is also the reason why regression is normally used for forex, stock exchange, no, for forecasting. No? And take note, however, that regression doesn't just also imply to continuous values that involve states. It can also imply other values. So, say for instance, if say I have, if a certain individual has this amount of monthly income salary and they have this X number of expenses for a given month, no? What will be the expense of this individual if his or her monthly salary is this specific value? So there is really more of like a correlation on what the value is that you have right now, and it is dependent on what would be the output value. Okay, this is also the reason why for regression, normally the formula here is you use linear regression, wherein you use the mathematical formula of mx plus b, right? So in your basic linear algebra, that's the simplest application of linear regression. Okay, now if your intention or if the insight that you want to gain from your data is more of like, I have this, like the previous example that I have given a while ago, wherein I apply it with specific labels, then perhaps classification would be the algorithm that would best suit you. So classification, this is the process of finding or discovering a model or function that helps in separating data into multiple categorical classes. So if regression deals more on continuous data, classification deals more on discrete data. Okay, so meaning I have this specific data set. I know that. So I suppose I have raw data that is I'll do a bit of a historical back here though. The number I have here the data of number of COVID-19 patients, for instance, right? And I got it from one of the hospitals here in Manila. So that's my typical example. And I want to know what is the statistics of the number of COVID-19 patients based on their age. I want to know um, how many are within the minors, or how many are adults, how many are seniors. Okay, I want to know also on how much are male or female or non-binary. So in other words, this is raw data and you're trying to label it, or you try to give it a specific classification. Okay, so this is where classification would come in. Data is categorized under different labels according to some parameters given in the input, and then the labels are predicted for the data. So meaning, in my previous example a while ago of four-legged creatures, no, that is actually an example of a classification algorithm. Okay, wherein the model, you feed it with specific labels or traits that you know your data would have, and based on these labels, no, the model would then come up with a specific category for that data set. So in other words, you're trying to put your data set in specific buckets. Okay, so if supervised learning deals more on essentially coddling the data, the model, no, to behave in a specific way, no, based on the training data that you give it, no. Unsupervised learning, this is also a classification wherein you allow the model to make sense of the data, but still giving it a specific threshold. So the keyword here for unsupervised learning is really threshold. No? So unsupervised learning is the training of a machine model using information that is neither classified nor labeled. And you allow the algorithm to act on that information without prior guidance. So here, the task of the machine is to group unsorted information according to any similarities, patterns, or differences without any prior training of data. So unlike supervised learning, no teacher or no trainer, is provided. That means no training will be given to the machine. Therefore, the machine is restricted to find the hidden structure in unlabeled data on its own. The only caveat for unsupervised learning is that even though you don't give it training data, you give it a threshold. No? So that threshold is then used by the model so that it can produce a result, no, whether that specific threshold is met or not. Okay, so in my example a while ago, no, so I suppose for instance, no, in that same data set wherein I have four-legged creatures, no, I immediately solely rely on the uh, model, no, to make sense of the input data that I gave it. Notice also that in the workflow of an unsupervised learning model, no, you don't have training data or you don't have a dedicated line or pipe for train the data to be fed into. You solely rely on the algorithm on how it can produce a result. Okay? So, there are two most common classifications of unsupervised machine learning algorithms normally used nowadays. So we have clustering and association rule learning. So what is clustering? So think of clustering as sort of like classification. Okay? But the only difference with clustering and classification is that in the latter, you give your data a specific label. Whereas in clustering, you solely rely on the model based on how loose or dense they are within a specific dimension, no, in your data set. No? And from there, no, derive a conclusion or derive an insight on um, a specific cluster or specific classification. Okay, so clustering is a type of unsupervised learning that is used to group similar data points together. That is why also the best way for us to gain insight on a clustering algorithm is to plot it in a graph, right? Because immediately you would notice here, no, that there are some specific data points in your data set wherein they would bunch or group together. Okay. So based on those specific groupings, no, you also set thresholds for the machine, for the model to look into. Okay. So meaning if this specific sets of data met this specific threshold, they can be considered as one cluster. Okay. So clustering algorithms work by iteratively moving data points closer to their cluster centers and further away from data points into other clusters. No? Now, the most commonly used algorithm for clustering is what's called the k-means clustering. That is also the simplest implementation of clustering. So how it works is that in k-means, you set the value of k, wherein k is the number of clusters that you want your model to form. So if your k here is equals to 3, the model will try its best to group together data points based on 3 clusters or 3 groups. Okay, so it's somewhat similar to classification, but unlike in classification where you have specific labels, in clustering, you just set a specific value and based on this value, the clusters would form. Okay, so that's one. And finally, another one is association rule learning. So this is a type of unsupervised learning technique that checks on the dependency of one data item on another data item. In other words, we're trying to find an association based on specific data sets, no? And from there, drive with a conclusion or an insight. Okay, so it tries to find some interesting relationships or associations among the variables of the data set. It is based on different rules in order to discover interesting relationships. So just to give you an example here, no, so just an illustration. Suppose I have here as my data set, I have 3 customers, customer 1, 2, and 3. Each of my customers are um, given a bag and or a cart rather, no, and we need to gain some insight on what items are found inside their cart. So customer 1, for instance, no, has milk, bread, and butter. Customer 2 has milk, cereal, bread, and butter. Customer 3 has milk, bread, and butter as well. So you'll notice that for customer 1, 2, and 3, no, every time they buy milk, it's as if they are also, or the likelihood of, or the chance for them to buy also bread and butter is also high. So that is where association rule would come in. No? So if I have this, is it correlated to this? Okay. So this applies more on, say, e-commerce. So that's just one classic, that's one common use example for this. Or perhaps you may have also looked in, experienced the same behavior wherein, say, for example, you are in Lazada or in Shopee, no, and you click add to cart, no, one of these items. Immediately, what the app would also do is to give you suggestions on what other items to purchase based on the item that you have placed in your cart. So that is association rule also working. No, it tries to make sense on what other data it can suggest with based on the data that you already have. And from there, get a correlation. Okay? So there. So these are just four of the most commonly used algorithms. No? So in supervised learning, you have classification and regression. No? For unsupervised, you have clustering and association rule learning. No? In supervised learning regression, normally this is used for forecasting. So this is used for um, continuous data. Whereas for classification, this is normally used for discrete data, and its main use case is to um, add labels on your data set. Okay. Now, both regression and classification are what would be considered as supervised machine learning models or algorithms. Whereas for unsupervised machine learning, you have clustering and association rule learning. So I'm just giving here a quick recap on these four. No? And in clustering, no, based on a specific threshold, you try to make sense of your data based on how grouped or dispersed they are in your data set. Whereas for association rule learning, you're trying to find a correlation on two possible data sets, right? So if I have this data set, how is it associated to another data set? Now, after discussing to you the different algorithms. I've discussed to you already what is machine learning in general, the different high-level approaches or classifications on of machine learning. So we have supervised and unsupervised, and we also discussed here four of the simplest algorithms. So let's now talk about another subset of what machine learning, no, which is deep learning. So you might have heard of this, especially in the data science community, um, wherein we have this what you would call convolutional neural networking, recursive neural networking. So what are these? No? And what is deep learning also in general? No? So as a subfield of machine learning, deep learning, this you can consider this as sort of like a paradigm on how you can implement machine learning. Think of it this way. You can have linear regression in the form of in the form of a Python script, no? And this Python script would be procedural in nature, meaning that you would still have code, you would still have it written in one file, and by importing the necessary libraries, no, you can create a model for that. For example, a linear regression model, and from there, no, do the entire machine learning lifecycle process, meaning you pre-train it with the data, test it out, and then finally feed it with actual input data. Okay, so in other words, you create a model for it, no? And how it is implemented in based on whatever programming language that you have, no, it can be implemented as a function. Normally, if you use Python, it is implemented just by simply calling a function called, example, linear regression. Or if you are familiar with um, NLTK are the natural language toolkit module in Python. You press NLTK, then for example, pre-processed data. So these come in the form of functions, right? Now, where am I going here now? Now, deep learning is different in a way that yes, it is still a function when you create it in the form of a script, but how it is laid out and structured out, it's completely different. No. Now, deep learning, as already also discussed a while ago, this uses what's called artificial neural networks, okay, or ANN, okay, or a network of artificial neurons. So to learn from multiple data sets, no, without again needing explicit programming. If, in example, a functional linear regression model, you create a you create a mathematical or algebraic equation for this, no? And normally that equation is just an equation, one layer. Okay, it's just implemented as one formula, no? A neural network consists of several layers interconnecting with each other. Okay? This is also why in most use cases for AI, we use deep learning for data that consists of multidimensional data sets. And when I refer to multidimensional data sets, no, this is where the concept of tensors would come in, for instance. Or to put it in more simplified terms, no, a matrix. So you know what a matrix is, right? Not the Matrix, the movie, but in math or algebra, no. A matrix is a dimension of numbers, not plotted example in a table or in a graph. Okay. If I'm going to put it in, say, example of an image, no, you can think of an image as sort of like a matrix of pixels, right? And each pixel is represented by a color, and that color is represented by a specific hexadecimal value. So for a model to make sense of an array or a matrix of data, no, one of the best approaches or tools to use is neural networks. This is also why these networks are normally used for use cases that would involve image, image processing, speech processing, or natural language processing, or NLP. Deep learning works, or deep learning needs lots of labeled data. Take note of the term here, labeled data, and powerful computers in order to work efficiently. Unlike your other, or example, a simple function wherein it just consists of, like what I've said, one formula, a neural network consists of several functions cascaded together, each of them being an input to the next. Okay. So a bit of a caveat here, no. I am not a medical professional, or I have very much terms of it, no. Pero let's take this analogy, no, to one more level. Okay? So the concept of deep learning actually comes from the creation of what's called neural networks. Now, let's take a step back first. Let's take a bit of biology and explain what is what is a neuron in its most basic sense. No? So again, I'm sorry, I'm not a medical professional here, pero I'll try my best to also discuss here what a neuron is. No? So we know that a neuron, this is the cell that is found in the human brain, right? And it consists of several parts. No? So the ones that I have highlighted here are the most important ones. No? And let's try to label them, or to add description on these of these parts. No? First off, you have the main cell body. Okay, and inside the body, you would find what's called the nucleus or the soma. Okay, or in some textbooks that I have read, na soma is the main body of the neuron. So it is this portion. Okay. Now, the cell body or the soma is also, it has smaller branches called dendrites. No? So these are small fibers that is used to receive data, okay, or to receive electrical signals from other neurons that it is connected with. These signals are then passed as impulses into the soma, and from the soma, the signal is then passed forwarded into what's called the axon. Okay, the axon is then further branched out into smaller branches called terminals. Okay, so the axon and its terminals communicate the signal to the target cell, which can be other neurons, or if it is connected to other, to, for example, the spinal cord, no, to the other parts of the human body. Okay, so that also stops my knowledge on biology. Okay, I'm sorry. No, now if I'm going to put the same structure in deep learning, no, you have a dendrite that is used to receive signal. You have a soma that is essentially, think of it as sort of like the main part or the main body of your neuron. And you also have the axon, which is used to, after receiving a signal, pass it forward to the next. No? This can have a similar structure as an artificial neuron. Okay? In an artificial neuron, you have what's called an activation function. So this is also a function in a way. It is still a mathematical equation. But unlike your one layer function or formula, it is expected to have an output that is cascading to a next layer. Okay? So the main body, the activation function, this is where the true computation would happen. But for this computation to also happen, no, you also need to have input layers or input signals. Also, perhaps it can come already from other from previous layers or the actual input itself. Okay, all of these inputs are then processed using the summing, using the function, and they are also summed together. Hence, you have there the summation formula before it is passed on as an output to the next neuron. Okay, now the input layers themselves are not just also fed as one specific set, or it is not just feeding one specific summing function. It can, in fact, be fed into several summing functions or activation functions. And these functions are then further cascaded into the next layer of summing functions, and so on and so forth. Okay? You then therefore create what's called a neural network, wherein it consists of several layers, no, inside your main model. Take note, this is still a model. You're still creating a model. Okay? Its only difference is that you already have what's called layers inside that model. Unlike in, say, your typical function, say, in your linear regression function, no, it's just consisting of one formula, one parameter, and then that's it. In a neural network, yes, you still have a formula for it. But underneath it, you have several nodes working. You have several activation functions working. Okay, so that is why a neural network is usually described as having different layers. Okay, now us as developers, we don't really necessarily need to go into the specifics of these layers and how they work. Okay, that is also why it is also called hidden layers, because us as developers, no, we don't really need much on how we really don't need to um, busy ourselves much on how a specific neuron works. No, all we have to know is that we feed this model with this specific input, and then it should produce a specific output. Okay, so these hidden layers, no, does have several calculations and feature extractions that is already abstracted or hidden to the user itself. Okay. Now, how it works, no, if I'm going to briefly discuss it, say for instance, I have an image and I want to do simple image detection, no, and I use neural networks as a means to make sense of what my image is, no. So it goes in this high level process, no. So first off, remember that your image, it consists of pixels, no, and normally the pixels are laid out in a specific dimension. Okay? The one that we are really focusing on are the pixels themselves. Remember that they are also represented with an arbitrary number or a value. These values are then fed into the first layer or the input layer. Okay. Each of the input layer consists of, again, a summing function or activation function. And it is then connected as a mesh to the next hidden layers. Okay, so how it is done is that first off, the weights are multiplied with the input signals, and you also apply a bias to it. Okay, again, this bias is also set with a specific threshold. Okay, now as the data is passed within the hidden layers, or as the signal flows within the hidden layers, the weighted sum of the inputs is calculated and fed to the activation function in each of the layers inside the model. Okay, so think of it like, for instance, no, I have a specific pixel that is example in X1, no, and then X1 is then fed into the first layer or the first hidden layer, no, across all of the different activation functions. It is then performed a specific calculation based also on which layer is triggered or activated. Okay, so fortunately for us, no, most of the functions that is available for or in programming languages, no, it's just a matter of us calling what specific network or um, uh, algorithm we want to use. No? So there is example a function for creating a recursive neural network. There's also a function for a convolutional neural network. No? So we really don't need to discuss into details what each of the hidden layers do when they are trying to make sense of, say, a small data set, okay, or say a pixel or a tensor, for instance. No? Now, what matters here, however, is the flow of these signals. Okay, so of course, in your deep learning model, there would also be error detection involved. Okay, in order to check these data sets, no, error in the output is then back propagated into the hidden layers. So you'll notice that the direction is not unidirectional. It is not just getting input and then immediately feeding it forward until it reaches the specific output. There is also a back propagation being done in order to optimize the hidden layers, okay, or rather the output. So this is what's also called in mathematical terms the cost function, wherein if I try to feed my data forward, no, the cost function would tell me how much of my data would also be fed back before it can be re-forwarded again. Okay, its purpose is to minimize the error rate in order to make the model's output have a higher chance of success. You know? So in one example, if this is used for image detection, I want to identify a specific area in my image. No, that specific area, no, would then be the focus of example the back propagation in your model. No? Sorry, I'm trying to also make sense of this, no, without going into the math of it. No, pero that's how it would work. No, again, fortunately for us, we don't necessarily need to go into the details on how each of the hidden layers work, because if say you are working with Python as your programming language, there are several tools and framework that is already available for us to implement neural networks. No? So for example, you have their Keras, you also have, I'm not sure if Palm by Google is already also, can also be used in Python. You also have Hugging Face, you also have TensorFlow, you also have PyTorch. No? So these are tools that you can also use in Python to implement neural networks. Okay, an important thing to consider. So, despite all of our discussions on what machine learning is, what neural networks are, no, and how they are structured out, no, the important thing to consider is that there is no one quote unquote perfect algorithm or perfect methodology on how you process your data. In fact, no, there are specific criteria that you need to consider first on whether what kind of algorithm or computation you would be using for your dataset, right? If say you're trying to have a projection of a specific of say the price of a house, no, or a price of houses, no, for X number of years, of course you do not use classification as your algorithm, right? So you use regression instead. No? Suppose I have I'm more into example natural language processing and I'm trying to create a chatbot that this chatbot is able to receive queries about say customer feedback, for instance. No, I'm not going to program that chatbot to give forecasts, right? I want that chatbot to be able to respond, based on the issue that the user typed as a text. So there, it might be better that you use another algorithm altogether. Okay. So my point here is that make sense of what your data is, no? What is the insight that you're trying to get from your data, and from there pick what is specific algorithm that you should choose for your your data processing. Okay, so because now let's wrap this one up also, no, with a bit of data science and engineering here as well, no? Despite our also our discussions on how algorithms should work and how should flow, no, remember that machine learning and deep learning, no, because you are dealing with data, you also have to make sure that the data that you feed your models with, no, is the data that you need. That is why a workflow is still applicable for us, no, especially if you are working with data. And this workflow really pertains on sanitizing your data first, no, understanding on how much data do you need. You remove any possible outliers in your data set before you can even proceed with the actual modeling. No, and this is also not to say that you stop in creating the model altogether. You also need a way to present your data, so this is where the deployment would be coming in. So in other words, no, part of the machine learning life cycle, its creation, its testing, training, optimization, and deployment can also be applied on how you deal and manage data in general. So this is also where the science of data science and engineering would be coming in as well. Wherein, how do you store your data? What are your data sources? Okay. How much of the data do you really need? Do you need all of your variables or parameters in order to create your AI model? So these are important considerations to also have in mind. Okay, so that's a bit of a technical session on what machine learning is in general. No? So let's zoom back a bit, and we've discussed the benefits of AI and ML. Of course, as a science, it still has its own limitations. No, it's not the end all be all, and I'll discuss here also some of them. No, So take note, this is also non-conclusive. Okay, so we can still there are also other limitations and challenges that machine learning and AI in general is still facing. And the number one of them is, of course, ethics of it. Okay, AI algorithms can inherit and amplify biases presented in the data they are trained on. So AI systems can also raise concerns on data privacy and security, requiring careful consideration of data collection, storage, and usage practices. With the onset and popularity of AI nowadays, we also need to understand that just because it is data doesn't mean that you should use it for an AI model. Okay? Keep in mind that we also need to understand how much bias does the data contain. Because definitely your model would also depend on those biases. Just to cite an example here, no, there had been ChatGPT has been, or OpenAI as a company, no, had been in several hot water situations, no, especially dealing with race, no, and ethnicity. No. I think back then when ChatGPT was still in its early stages, no, um, to their credit, no, they are already implementing image generation. Okay, so meaning that you, based from a given text prompt, you can already generate an image. Okay, one of the prompts there was um, generate an image for me. Generate an image or portrait of a pope. Okay, that's the very basic. This is actually one of the controversies OpenAI has faced. No, one of the prompts that you type there is generate a portrait of the Pope. Okay, so definitely us, no, we know who is the current Pope right now in in the Roman Catholic Church. But surprisingly, ChatGPT generated a POC instead of the Pope that we know right now. Okay. So POC here meaning person of color. And for us as Filipinos, it might not be that of an impact, but for other countries, this is really an outrage. No? To see a Pope that is depicted to be not of the race or ethnicity they are right now already is a controversial aspect. Okay, so that's one. Another concept here is that I believe there are already, even before ChatGPT became a thing, no, there are also what you would call virtual AI assistants, okay, or um, virtual partners or virtual apps. I forgot the name of them, no, but essentially you would have your own. I'm not sure if this is even a thing, no, but your own virtual partner, no, that would reside in your phone, and whenever you are lonely, you can talk to them. Okay, so normally these would come as anime characters. No? I forgot the name of the app itself. Okay, so I brought that issue up. It's because that app also garnered some controversy because most of the people, based on the study, no, allegedly, um, people who normally use those apps are the ones who are um, experiencing psychological challenges. For example, they have depressive tendencies, no, they are a bit antisocial, no, and the app initially would start off to be encouraging when talking to the end user. In time, as it continues to learn more on how the user interacts with it, eventually the virtual AI would spew out abusive statements. No, sometimes it would also go into the side of BDSM, if you know what I mean. No, so this is where really the ethics of AI would come into play. No, how much data is the model currently training? Okay, so that's one limitation. So long-winded there, no? But there you go. Another one is deterministic problems. So AI and machine learning excel at finding patterns and making predictions. However, they may struggle with problems requiring logical reasoning, common sense, or dealing with entirely new situations altogether. Remember that a model is only as effective as the data that you feed it with. If you don't feed it with anything, no, it will just spew out nonsense. Okay. In Python, there is a model or there is a module rather. You can look it up also. It's called Chatterbot. No. So essentially, you can create your own chatbot using this module. Just upload it, and then train it with the responses that you need. No, and then it just works. No? I've tested this one out also myself. No, if you take the chatbot out of the box, meaning you create an instance of it, and you try to type prompts there, the most that it can do is to mimic your responses. So example, if you type hello, it would still type hello. It would type hi, it would still type hi, and so on and so forth. Okay? So this is an example of a deterministic problem situation. At the start, out of the box, the chatbot itself is not fully trained enough with the proper context that it still doesn't know how to properly respond. Okay? Let me stop briefly my share. I'm not sure if I can share it or I'll be able to share it here now. Wait, give me a moment. I already have, in fact, that chatbot in a different platform. Eh. Wait lang. Let me put it up here. If you've heard of Python Anywhere, so this is a hosting platform. I also encourage you to to open an account for this. So this is actually free. Let me create or let me open up my uh, console here. So I'll show to you an example, based on what the chatbot would respond. Okay. You're currently seeing my screen, right? So so eventually also no when we learn more about machine learning, artificial intelligence in general, no, um, the most popular language used for implementing such is normally Python, no, but we also can use R. I'm not sure if Rust can already be used for AI, but the most common one nowadays is Python. So let me just go into, okay, so there you go. Let me activate it. So I'll just show to you a quick demo on that on that limitation. Okay, I'm currently also working on a chatbot myself, so just to try it out. No, okay. So just to show to you on how this works. No, so this is also an example of natural language processing. No, so Chatterbot. This is a module in Python that allows you to create a chatbot. Okay, and you basically just train it with proper context, no, and a given corpus. What a corpus is, no, in fact, we'll discuss this more when we talk already about natural language processing in general. But this is what I want to demonstrate. So I currently have this chatbot that would currently right now is trained into um, responding to greetings, to conversations, and also a bit of um, self-awareness in a way wherein if you try to ask it whether it a bot or not, it would respond accordingly. Okay. Apart from that, I've also trained this to tell you the specific time and date. So keep that situation in mind. Okay. So I'll try to work on my chatbot or try to run it. Okay. There. So right now, what it's currently doing is that it is downloading or training in a way. It's currently training my chatbot based on the context that I have given you or given it, no? And it's there. It's already this is a chatbot. Okay, so either I'm a chatbot, just type a question or just type by to exit. Okay, so let's try to give it or take note that this chatbot is not yet completely trained. Okay, in other words, I only gave it based on um, greetings, what it is, how it should properly respond, and if I ask it for a date and time, it would give me the date and time. Okay? So let's start with simple. Hello. Okay, I trained it to also respond, right? So I am having this conversation. So what are you? See. So this is an example of a deterministic problem. Okay. What are you? I just gave it because I did not properly train yet the bot. It spewed out a different response. Okay? Who is but a form following the function of what? Does it make sense? Right? So let's try to give it, say, are you a bot? It would respond properly. What if I try to ask it with what's the time, no? It gives out the local time, but it did not give it gave out the local time to where my server is, which is I believe in Germany or UK, no? But it did not give me the Philippine time. Okay? So what date is it? Notice that the response it produced is not correct. So this is an example of a deterministic problem. Because the context, remember that the data that I fed it with is to just answer basic input hellos and highs, no? Beyond that, it will not respond any other response aside from the one that I have fed it with. No, so just to actually no a bit of this is already veering towards natural language processing, no, but just to show to you an example on what are the training data sets that I have currently fed it with. Let me open up one of the training data sets that it has, no. So in a chatbot, no, you can also feed it with the response that you want it to spew out. No, you can also set thresholds whether a given input matches a specific or matches some form of a predetermined answer, and from there the chatbot would produce a specific response for it. Okay. Remember, we are still even though we are already towards creating a chatbot in a way, no, it is still about machine learning. Why is it? Because this is the training data set that I have given it, no? And from here, it is able to decide what specific response it is able to give. Okay, it is able to hold out some conversations. And you'll notice that I did not include there any question about, are you a bot? So that simple statement, are you a bot? No? Are you a chatbot in a way? It cannot find it in any of its training data. So it would just output a result closest to the question or text that I have given it with. Okay, so that's a bit of a point there, no? So it's also a bit long-winded. So the point here is that training of a model is also important. Okay, and it's also important to understand the data that you feed it with. Cannot stress that enough. And having said that, no, correctness and completeness of data is also a factor. Inaccurate, incomplete, or biased data can lead to unreliable and potentially harmful outcomes. No, so the one that I have demonstrated to you is just a simple example. Put this one in a bigger scale, and definitely you'll have problems. Okay? So, another challenge or limitation is misuse and application. This goes alongside the ethics of AI, wherein the technology can be used for malicious purposes, such as creating deepfakes, spreading misinformation, or automating discriminatory practices. No? Um, the last one, discriminatory practices, this is where um, bots, literally bots in chat rooms, no, or in social media platforms are also rampant. No, I believe Twitter or X alone is able to delete several bot accounts, no, because these bot accounts are normally used by or created by end users in order to um, farm data from the platform. No, so it's a bit ill-intentioned, no? And lastly, interpretability. So remember that data can also, if you're not clear enough, the model can also be ambiguous on what it could produce. Okay, so many AI models, especially deep learning models, can be complex and opaque. When we say opaque here, it does remember what I have discussed a while ago about the models having hidden layers. So that this is one concept of it, no? Making it difficult to understand how they arrive at their decisions. This lack of interpretability can also hinder trust and accountability, as well as debugging efforts. So this also, again, is a use case most applicable to ethics as well. No? So how much data or how much of the model do you want exposed for others to see? No, because you also run there the risk of the data itself being susceptible for misuse and misapplication. So you notice all of them are stitched together here, in fact. Okay, so this is a bit of a realistic picture for you on what the technology is currently. Okay, so we've discussed a lot in this session, this more than 1.5 hour long. So, so this is again just a tip of the AI iceberg in a way, because we haven't yet also here discussed the ethics of it. We did not also discuss the specific applications. We did not even here mention how AI is used in robotics, no? But uh, you can I highly encourage you guys, if you had that interest as well, you can also look this one up on your own. But my point here is that I hope this session is able to give you a bit of an insight on what AI is. And just to recap, no, again, when you talk about AI, we deal with the science of creating systems that mimic human intelligence. Okay, history-wise, although it became popular in 2020s, it is there since the early 1950s. Okay, AI covers a wide range of sciences and fields, including robotics, machine learning, and natural language processing, and even philosophy and governance. Okay, machine learning is a subset of AI which focuses more on algorithms that can learn from data. Deep learning is a subset of Deep learning is a subset of machine learning, which uses artificial neural networks and its creation. And finally, no, despite its boom in popularity and despite its current advances, no, it still has its own limitations, specifically pertaining to its ethics, its use, data security, no, and data ambiguity.